They are some of the most popular and flashy TV evangelists in the country. These men appear to have made a lot of money, and they travel, well, like kings.
At nearly 90 years old, a man standing behind a pulpit made a promise to his congregation that shook the entire religious broadcasting world, and nobody blinked. For decades, this televangelist built his reputation on a single unshakable claim: he would live to see his 120th birthday. It was his personal prophecy, his divine promise. But in late 2024, something extraordinary happened. He didn't just restate his conviction, he went further. He told thousands of believing followers that God had spoken to him with incredible precision, revealing the years ahead through divine language. 2025, the nation awakens. 2026, the correction arrives. And then came the moment nobody expected. He announced with absolute certainty that he had entered into a sacred contract with the Almighty, guaranteeing his death on December 6, 2056. That exact date. Not as hope, not as prayer, as fact, as divinely promised reality straight from heaven itself. Stop for a moment and consider the weight of that statement. An 89-year-old man, surrounded by thousands of loyal believers who have given him millions in tax-free donations, just declared that God personally assured him 3 more decades of earthly life. And the room stayed silent. Nobody questioned, nobody challenged. Because inside that ecosystem, doubting the messenger feels identical to doubting God. That psychological hold over human decision-making is something most people can never fully grasp. But prophecies, when spoken publicly and recorded for history, leave a permanent trail. A Christian scholar who spent years documenting the teaching practices inside this movement released a comprehensive report in early 2025. It was devastating. This preacher, known worldwide for his declarations about God's will, had made dozens of specific predictions over the years. The 2020 election would produce a clear outcome one way. That didn't happen. The midterm elections would show a massive political swing. They didn't. In April 2020, he stood before cameras and announced that a global virus would be completely eliminated, destroyed by faith alone. More than 1 million Americans died in the months that followed. Not one single public prophecy this man has ever made came true. Not one. Yet his following grows bigger every year. And the reason isn't accuracy. It's the intoxicating feeling of believing you're hearing directly from God through someone else's mouth. The prophecy that truly matters, though, isn't about elections or disease. It's about something far more tangible: money. Specifically, where hundreds of millions in donations actually went, and what empire those contributions constructed. That empire has no equal in American religious history. Most religious leaders expand their congregations. This man built something else entirely. His organization owns roughly 1,500 acres of land that used to belong to the United States Marine Corps. The military personnel had left behind an airfield. This preacher transformed it into his own private airport, a fully functional runway with maintenance buildings, fuel stations, and storage hangars. On this sprawling compound sits television production studios, warehouse facilities, international offices spread across 5 continents, administrative centers, and his family's personal residence. This isn't a house of worship. This is a small city with religious branding. The aircraft collection generates the most public conversation, and with good reason. The ministry operates a Gulfstream jet valued near $36 million, a second aircraft worth approximately $20 million, and a third plane valued between $2 and $5 million. These weren't purchased gradually, they were accumulated rapidly. The Gulfstream reportedly came from a Hollywood filmmaker, though the actual transaction price was never made public. And here's the part that reveals the machinery. After purchasing that $36 million aircraft, this minister went on television and asked his followers, many of them working regular jobs, paying mortgages, struggling to make ends meet, to donate an additional $17 to $20 million. Why? To upgrade the runway and expand the hangar space. He bought the aircraft, then asked the congregation to finance the parking garage. The family residence tells another story. An 18,000-square-foot lakefront mansion sits on 24 acres near Fort Worth, featuring 6 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms, a staircase that spirals upward, lighting fixtures of crystal, and doors transported from European palaces. The property valuation hovers around $7 million. But here's the legal mechanism that makes it work. It's classified as a minister's residence, which means it pays 0 property taxes. Local government loses roughly $150,000 annually in uncollected revenue from just this single property. When someone once questioned whether such grandeur was appropriate, the answer was unambiguous. He said he consulted heaven directly and didn't care what the public thought. Then there are the details buried in financial filings. Reports describe a personal watch collection of approximately 36 Breitling timepieces, many featuring diamond inlays, an automobile, a Bentley, with a Breitling dashboard clock. In 2009, the organization applied to the Federal Tax Authority requesting that a $3.6 million aircraft be classified as tax-exempt. The Federal Tax Authority said no. Even the government's tax division wouldn't approve that request. Every jet, every airfield, every imported architectural detail, every luxury item, purchased entirely through tax-exempt donations from individuals who believed their money was supporting gospel work. Yet when one of America's most prominent federal investigators decided to examine where that money truly went, what he uncovered was far more systematic than mere extravagance. He discovered a carefully constructed system designed to ensure nobody from outside could ever truly look inside. On November 5, 2007, a United States senator from Iowa announced a comprehensive investigation targeting 6 major televangelist operations, including this one. The senator wanted clarity. Were these nonprofits exploiting their tax-exempt status to hide personal luxury? Each organization received a formal request for financial documentation with a December deadline. Of the 6, only 2 complied meaningfully. This particular ministry? It invoked constitutional protections and essentially refused to cooperate with the United States Senate. But employees inside the operation painted a radically different picture in media interviews. One former staff member described processing as many as 500 prayer requests each day, and each request arrived paired with a donation. The entire system operated automatically. A follower submitted a written prayer about a loved one's illness, and a computer generated a personalized response letter that went back out by mail. The founder? He never read a single request. He never prayed over a single name. The prayer operation functioned as an industrial machine, and donors believed a chosen servant of God was personally interceding on their behalf. Another former employee who worked inside the operation for 5 years before leaving told news media he witnessed staff performing work on behalf of private for-profit enterprises connected to the family. Federal investigators confirmed business connections spanning cattle ranches, equestrian operations, aviation services, real estate holdings, energy exploration, and oil and gas production. Flight records obtained through public documentation showed the ministry jet used for vacations in Hawaii, visits to exotic game preserves in South Texas, ski trips to Colorado, and shopping expeditions to upscale Florida destinations. The Senate investigation's final report contained a passage that should disturb anyone reading it. Former workers stated the organization employed aggressive tactics to maintain silence. One employee reported being explicitly told that speaking publicly would result in financial ruin, family affliction, and being cast outside God's protective covering. They used spiritual language as a silencing mechanism. You have stepped away from God's umbrella of safety by touching His anointed. That was the threat. The investigation continued for 4 years. It concluded in January 2011. 0 penalties, 0 fines, 0 consequences. The Senate's own staff admitted they never pursued subpoenas because potential witnesses feared retaliation. The case closed. The preacher walked free, completely untouched by accountability. But the teachings his organization promoted would soon put real lives in genuine danger, not through missing money this time, but through a decision about medical care that would explode into a genuine public health emergency inside his own congregation. In August 2013, a person returned to a church service having recently traveled internationally, and they carried the measles virus. Within 48 hours, 21 confirmed infections emerged, including a 4-month-old infant too young for vaccination protection. Of those 21 cases, 16 had never received any vaccines. Every school-aged child who got sick had been homeschooled. This represented the largest measles cluster in the entire country that calendar year, concentrated in a single congregation, pastored by the minister's eldest daughter. The church's internal culture made crystal clear why it happened. A former member explained to the press that getting vaccinated would have been viewed as faithlessness, as essentially telling God you didn't believe in his protection. The culture simply didn't permit it. 3 full years before the outbreak, in a broadcast, this same preacher called the vaccination process downright criminal activity. His wife, in a separate program, told viewers that Christians didn't need influenza shots because Jesus himself provided spiritual protection against the flu. When a religious organization spends years declaring medicine to be unfaith and trust in God to be the only legitimate protection, a disease outbreak isn't accidental. It's predictable. It's inevitable. After the infections multiplied and an infant faced real danger, the church suddenly organized vaccination clinics. Approximately 220 people received shots. The organization's spokesperson insisted to media that they had never advocated against vaccinations. Yet during the crisis, the pastor's daughter told her congregation something revealing: "I will tell you what the facts are, and the facts are the facts. But you know the truth, and truth always supersedes facts." That single sentence encapsulates the organization's entire worldview. Facts are negotiable. Doctrine overrides data. Even when an infant faces a preventable disease. The measles outbreak was merely a practice run, because 7 years later, when a pandemic swept across the planet and killed millions, this same preacher's response would become the defining moment of his entire career. In March 2020, as COVID-19 shut down the world, he told followers he would never contract the virus because his faith protected him from infection. He compared it to common influenza and suggested anyone in his services displaying symptoms could receive healing immediately. Then, in early April, he delivered the performance that would define his entire public image for a generation. He stood in his empty church, blew forcefully at a camera, and announced that the virus was now destroyed forever. He led his congregation in a chant calling upon wind and divine heat to burn away disease in the name of Jesus Christ. The video exploded. Every major social media platform carried it. Comedy shows remixed it. Late-night television parodied it endlessly. And if you watch closely, there's a brief moment where the preacher almost appears to smile, as if even he recognizes the absurdity of what he's performing. But buried beneath all the memes and jokes is the detail that changes everything. During that same broadcast, he told his followers that God had instructed him to raise $300 million in income that specific year, and that the pandemic wouldn't be permitted to interfere with that goal. Millions of his followers were losing jobs, facing homelessness, struggling to feed families during the worst economic collapse in a generation. And he was asking them to give more. He had also previously told viewers they could receive healing by physically touching their television screens during his sermons, a suggestion that may have discouraged actual medical attention during a pandemic that ultimately killed more than 1 million Americans. When a religious teacher tells followers that touching a screen provides medicine, and that increased giving during crisis represents faith, it ceases being theology. It becomes exploitation. It becomes predatory. The viral moment made him the most criticized preacher in the country, but it didn't slow his operation down at all. Behind the jokes and the memes, a far quieter and more calculated system was operating, one built on family legacy, political connections, and a dynasty where more than 20 relatives held paid positions within the ministry structure itself. The organization isn't a church by any traditional definition. It functions as a family corporation wearing a tax-exempt religious costume. According to nonprofit analysis organizations, more than 20 family members collected paychecks from this ministry. One son-in-law serves as CEO and co-pastor. A daughter oversees the Bible College as CEO and Chief Visionary Officer. Another daughter manages Covenant Partner Services. A son previously served as CEO. A granddaughter hosts the organization's podcast. The ministry publishes literature, produces media content, sells branded merchandise, and operates its own educational institution on the compound. Every revenue stream flows back into the same biological family. The political connections run equally deep. This preacher sat on a presidential advisory board. In 2015, he laid hands on a political candidate at his business tower and prayed. Before a presidential election cycle, he encouraged followers to vote in a specific direction. That candidate won and invited him to White House celebrations. Years later, at a public rally, that same political figure called him one of the finest Christians and one of the greatest men in the country. When a religious figure possesses that level of access to the highest executive office, institutional accountability becomes nearly impossible. A former member of a competing prosperity ministry who eventually walked away and became an outspoken critic wrote something cutting. It's remarkably easy to believe teachings that put money directly into your bank account, even if you're simultaneously confirming your spiritual condemnation for deceiving the vulnerable and the desperate. When a news organization's lead investigator confronted this preacher in a public venue in May 2019 about his aircraft collection, something shifted. His face transformed from charm to anger in seconds. He leaned forward, raised his voice, pointed directly at her. The footage went viral immediately. Years later, in a conversation with his granddaughter on a podcast, he dismissed the incident as simply an opportunity and stated he doesn't absorb either approval or condemnation. More than 20 family members on the payroll. Dinner invitations from the White House, an organization accountable to absolutely no outside authority. Yet the most troubling dimension of his story involves how everything began because the man who accumulated the largest personal wealth of any American minister was once a struggling musician with 2 failed marriages and a saxophone. The transformation happened in the 1960s, though it required a specific kind of encounter. Kenneth Max was born in 1936 in Lubbock, Texas, to Baptist parents who separated when he was still young. His mother primarily raised him alone in proximity to a military base. He wasn't fascinated by scripture. Growing up, he was obsessed with aircraft and the sky. By his late teenage years, he'd completely shifted toward music. He acquired a saxophone and threw himself into the 1950s rock and roll scene. He performed alongside other musicians who became legendary. In 1957, he recorded a song that reached Billboard's Top 40 chart, reaching number 17, remaining charted for 15 weeks, and landing him on a nationally broadcast music television program. But the music career deteriorated quickly. A first marriage in 1955 to one woman produced a daughter named Terry, but dissolved by 1958. He married a second time that same year, and that marriage also failed. 2 marriages ended before he turned 25. The man who would spend his entire life preaching about covenant loyalty had already broken 2 covenants himself. In 1962, he married for the 3rd time to Gloria and experienced a religious conversion. By 1967, at age 30, he enrolled at a Bible college and secured employment as a private pilot and driver for a well-known prosperity preacher. He flew this established minister to revival crusades across the country, observing directly how to construct seed faith, fundraising the teaching that donated money returns to the contributor multiplied by the divine. He simultaneously studied under the founder of Word of Faith theology, absorbing the concept that believers can speak material reality into existence through spoken affirmation. On September 7, 1967, Kenneth and Gloria established their own religious organization, combining earlier fundraising models with confession theology to construct the highest-earning version of prosperity teaching in American religious history. What began as a basic newsletter and rented meeting space transformed into 1,500 acres of land, a private airfield, multiple aircraft, a family-controlled business structure, connection to the nation's highest political office, and an estimated personal net worth somewhere between $300 million and $750 million, depending on who calculates it. The struggling musician found a superior stage. Unlike recording charts that plateau and decline, this particular audience has never stopped paying. This preacher claims he will reach 120 years old. He claims God personally made this guarantee to him. But every single prophecy he has ever voiced publicly has failed. And the entire structure he constructed, the aircraft, the airfield, the mansion, the family dynasty, rests completely on one foundation: the unquestioning faith of people who have never once been permitted to examine where their money actually ends up. He built this empire on faith, survived every investigation into his finances, outlasted every scandal, performed his viral moment on live broadcast, dined in the residence of the president, and declared his exact date of death to the world. So here's the question for you. Do you believe this is a representative of God? Or is he the most brilliant salesman American organized religion has ever produced? Don't keep that thought to yourself. Drop your honest response in the comments below, and please hit the like button to help reach more people. We're dedicated to bringing you the truth behind religious headlines, and your support matters.